Hello, and welcome to the Total Mental Performance Podcast, the one and only mindset podcast dedicated to helping fitness entrepreneurs and coaches master their mindset, giving you insider access to industry leaders around their psychology, their campfire stories, and the mindset required to be successful in this business. I'm your host, Kieran O'Neill, mental performance coach and founder of Total Mental Performance, the world's fastest growing specialist mindset service dedicated to the fitness industry. So, without further ado, let's lean in and listen. Yes, team, and welcome to another episode of the Total Mental Performance Podcast. Today, we have a very, very special guest who I'm so excited to speak to. He is one of the UK's leading sports nutritionists. He works with Reading Football Club, Wasps Rugby, and on top of that, he also has his own athlete online coaching and nutrition program, which I wish I had when I was boxing back in the day, cutting weight. Honestly, it would have made a hell of a difference. I'm also very fortunate to have him in my personal boardroom overseeing my nutrition. So whenever I have questions, he's always there and he's just a wealth of knowledge. His name is Chris Lowe. He's an absolute legend. Chris, mate, thank you so much for coming on.
An absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for the very nice introduction there. I'm really looking forward to getting into today's topic and having a good chat. It'd be really good. Looking forward to it.
100%. We're going to have a lot of fun. So, Chris, a lot of people are going to look at your work with, say, Reading or Wasps Rugby, and they're going to go, wow, how do you even get there? How do you even get into that? There's so many coaches that want to break into the sports world. There's many coaches that want to even just break into that performance element. So just run me through your story. How did you get into nutrition and how did that play out?
Yeah, so I guess if you go all the way back to perhaps like teenage years, always had a huge interest in sports, fitness, going to the gym, trying to be the best kind of physical shape I can be, looking to, as like a younger kind of skinny kid, always looking to trying to build muscle, all that kind of stuff. So you kind of go down that route of doing like your own learning and things like that, reading all the magazines, the blogs. More times than not is completely wrong and just left a lot of time being wasted, frustrated, and so on. So it's like, right, let's go and do this properly. So went to university down in Cardiff to do sports biomedicine and nutrition. It was kind of like a jack of all trades kind of course. Like you kind of did a little bit of like nutrition, a bit of psychology, a bit of biomechanics, a bit of like biochemistry, all this kind of stuff. And it just gave me like really nice exposure of, what's out there and what kind of avenue you can go down. And for me, like going into university, I didn't really know what I want to do after it. It's more a case of, I like this idea of health, fitness, nutrition. Let's just explore and see how it goes. And then from that, found nutrition the most interesting thing. And then just pursued my sort of further learning and development in sport and exercise nutrition up in Leeds. And then from there, just created a lot of contacts. And it kind of just developed from there. And what you kind of find with elite sport, unfortunately, it's in terms of like who you know, it's incredibly important. So my kind of first role was generated over a coffee. Basically like, right, I want to break into this elite sport industry. Love working with, love rugby. Can I just come and like volunteer, shadow and stuff like that? At the time, I had like my own business, slowly up and running, but still in this like infancy kind of stages where I don't really know what I was doing. Still academically quite good, but I just didn't have that experience. So I was like, right, I just need some experience, get my foot in the door. So I just started doing a little bit of work with Hull KR, which is a Super League rugby league team, which is, given the fact that I had no experience, going straight into that. Very, very, lucky that I got that opportunity to do that. And then from there, like did some good work and I kind of developed into more of like a weekly kind of consultancy role. And then going then down to Wasps Rugby, start with the academy. That came off the back of, we need a nutritionist. Do you know anybody? Like, oh yeah, we've got Lozy here. He's doing great work with the lads. Get him in, see how he gets on. And then first team nutritionist ended up moving on. I think he went to Leicester City Football. Then that role came available. Then I moved up into there. And then been in Wasps for about 4 years now, which has been pretty incredible. And then the Reading one was basically off the back of a conversation I had at lockdown. So with lockdown, it was a case of, right, I've kind of been in this industry for a little while and I don't really know that many people, that many practitioners. And it's like, right, let's reach out and let's chat, let's we all had kind of an abundance of time at the start of lockdown,
Mm.
especially with elite sport because it all got cancelled. So everyone had a lot of time. So like started chatting with this one guy, and like got on really well, house on fire type thing. And then kind of like 4 or 5 months later is a case of like, just had word from Reading. I'd look for a nutritionist. I'm pretty flat out, pretty busy with my own consultancy roles in football. Do you want it? I was like, okay, right.
That's so cool.
So, like, it matters so much how much you know or who you know in elite sports, 100%. So any kind of advice for individuals trying to get into elite sport is, reach out, make contacts, because who you know is incredibly important. Obviously, you need to be very competent at what you do. That is, that's kind of a given. But when you have that level of competency with the network, things will start to materialize, and half these roles unfortunately don't get advertised. So when I was like just finished university, had like this qualification, the academic kind of knowledge, it's like, right, what do I do? There's no, it went on like sort of UK sport, performance nutritionist roles in UK, zero. It's like, right, shit. This is a good move. So it's a case of like, right, let's just start making contacts, let's start building something up. And during that time, it's like, right, I need to take responsibility of generating some kind of income. So it's like, right, let's start doing online coaching and let's kind of build it up for there. And then alongside online, I had like an office in Leeds for a period of time. Then just kind of slowly built that side of the business up. And then the consultancy role with elite sport came into play. Huge amount of sort of like growth from that. And obviously from a business perspective, having that as a social proof is absolutely huge. And they both go hand in hand. And this is kind of where I am now, I guess, if you fast forward it a little bit.
Incredible. And there's a really interesting book, I don't know if you've read it, called The Luck Factor by Richard Wiseman. Have you read it?
I've not, no.
Right, I'm going to take a note down, and I want you to send me your address, and I'm going to send you a copy of it. The Luck Factor.
Outstanding.
It's an incredible book. And basically what Richard did was Richard studied luck at the University of Hertfordshire, actually where I'm from. And he studied luck over a number of different years. And essentially what he discovered was luck's actually a bit of a mindset. It's a mindset and a series of behaviors. And they were able to distill various different behaviors, habits, and decisions and outlooks and perspectives that self-professed lucky people had and self-professed unlucky people had. And one of the biggest factors of luck was lucky people beat more people and lucky people connect with more people. So you generated your own luck, and there was a certain mindset in there that was like, I'm not going to get this applying for a job on the internet. No, I'm going to go out and meet and network. And I think if you look at a lot of successful individuals, a lot of them have been able to get into certain networks. They have been able to meet certain people and kind of just learn how to connect with other human beings. And it's incredible. And like you said, sport is a very tight knit community, and getting in is hard. Once you're in and you have that experience, it's like a merry-go-round, isn't it? And one person leaves and then another person leaves and the manager gets sacked, so he takes his team with him, and it kind of all goes round, which is really cool. Really, really cool.
Yeah, it's really interesting. You saying they're just making your own luck. Yeah, if I sort of think when I guess like what was the long term mission and vision and stuff like that, 5-year plans, everything. I don't really know where I'm going to end up because opportunities just come in all the time, and like the plan ends up being like adapted and pivoted so at so many kind of time frames throughout the kind of years. But I kind of know like what I'm doing right now in terms of like my daily tasks, my daily non-negotiables is right to move me forward. Is just I'm not entirely sure what that forward typically looks like, and I guess doing this like daily tasks, just for example, showing up, serve my clients, showing up, social media, improving the marketing, the business side of things. I guess I'll be generating my own luck based on that kind of definition there, and then opportunities arise.
That's it. And just automating those habits. You talk a lot to us and the team about consistency. And it's just consistently doing the small actions again and again and again and again. Even when you feel like they're not there, you're still putting it in the bank, And I think that consistency and that sporting background has obviously served you really, really well. And I think when you do have that sort of sporting competitive element, it kind of makes the business part, I never want to say easy because it's not easy, but it makes it more bearable because, in my view, sports and business are both games. They're both sports, and the principles apply the same for boxing and business. It's like you think about business and a boxer has to be able to adapt to his opponent in front of him, just like you have to adapt to the market. You have to be consistent. You can't cut corners. If you cheat, it's going to show up in the ring, or if you cheat, it's going to show up in your product, your service, or with your clients or in your marketing. You have to be consistent. You got to get dumped on your ass sometimes, and you're going to take a beating, and sometimes publicly. But you got to dust yourself down and go back. And I think all of those lessons transfer across to the business of coaching as well as sports as well.
Yeah, 100%. And if I kind of reflect back to the start of my coaching career, like, man, I was not a good coach. you know, um, you know, like you said, like I might come across somewhat semi-polished now, but back then it was like I had no idea what I was doing. Like, again, kind of come out of university having some degree of confidence, like, oh, I'm academically smart, like, oh, I know about protein synthesis, I know about carbohydrate metabolism, all this cool stuff, but I had no idea how to communicate with people properly, coach them effectively, no idea how to have the correct systems in my business to serve my clients properly and get good results or great results. And yeah, there's so many kind of failures and lessons kind of derived from that over the course of weeks, months, and years. And yeah, so I guess now having a fairly well structured kind of system I work from, but it's just from like so many kind of just fuck ups through my early kind of years. Um, and I speak to like sort of practitioners now, like trying to get into nutrition, start their own business, and they're like, oh, what do I do? What to do? It's like, well, I can point in the right direction, but you're gonna fail. Like, you're gonna fail a lot. But then just take notes of it, reflect on it. Why did that happen? And then put a plan in place going forward. Like, as we say, like, we either win or we learn. We never fail. So it's just always moving forward with that. Um, so yeah, like just like business and sport, like you said, if you get smacked in the nose and you get really fall on your ass, it's like, wow, okay, why did that happen? Same with business. If you like lose some clients or do whatever, it's like, wow, okay, why did that happen? Was it me? Was I doing something wrong? Was my communication? Was it the results I was getting? You just start asking more deeper, more meaningful questions, so it doesn't happen again. Like, I absolutely hate failing, but I appreciate it's the best learning opportunity I can have, like these experiences. Like, I can learn a lot in a journal, like sort of new research, keeping up to date with that, but nothing kind of makes you learn and take notice more than getting smacked in the face by something.
That's it. And I love, so I worked with a lady called Hazel Gale, a former kickboxing world champion, my first ever mindset coach and performance coach back when I was boxing. And she really encouraged me to change my relationship with failure. She was like, your relationship with failure at the time was really bad. So I'd get frustrated, I'd get angry, I'd get annoyed, I'd feel inferior, I'd feel not worthy. And I used to take it really, 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 really personally. And then another mentor of mine, a guy called Ron Goddard, who is a fascinating character, very successful in business, been a senior leader, CEO, VP of some big organizations, as well as investing in technology businesses. And then I told him about my relationship with failure, and he says, here's something really simple, dude. Really simple. Just treat everything like an experiment. I went, yeah? He's like, yeah, treat everything like an experiment. So what I do is when I get given a frame, I like to build metaphors around them so then they stick in my mind. And the metaphor I built was, well, if I'm a scientist, and obviously you'll appreciate the science with your background, scientists, they set up an experiment, they run the experiment, and then they prove or disprove a hypothesis. And they just run those again and again and again and again. And the best scientists can just keep running hypotheses. They keep putting in the work. They get the most amount of data and they get it back. And then they go, okay. But the difference between top scientists and scientists that get disheartened and then give up is the top scientists recognize everything is an experiment. If you take that into coaching and if you take that into business, it's like, well, I've got this hypothesis where I believe that we can build, the world's fastest growing and largest mindset service dedicated to the fitness industry. That's my current hypothesis. And I want to deliver that in two mechanisms. One is through our one-to-one coaching, and then one is through our TMP Academy and group coaching. And here are the mechanisms that need to happen. And here's how we're going to prove or disprove that. But it's not about I need to prove the world how good I am, or I need to beat every other therapist or mindset coach out there. It's like, well, no, I've just got this hypothesis that we can do our bit in this container and we'll prove or disprove it. And I'm disproving stuff all the time. And I think that frame for me of just learning that failure doesn't exist, everything's an experiment. What did I expect? I either proved or disproved it. Just really put it down for me. So I used to find failure was such a hard thing to deal with.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. So I guess when you think of it from like an experiment perspective, you look at everything objectively. Like what works, what doesn't work, why did this happen, why didn't this happen, and then what's the learnings from that. Not, if you're like running like an experiment, you don't get emotionally attached to a result, or hopefully you don't. Obviously, you can have like confirmation bias and stuff in there, but if you think of it like that, it's put something in, what's the result? Okay, what do we need to change? What do we need to tweak? And then over time, you just build up that huge amount of like wealth of information based on that one subject matter, and then you get a pretty good answer from it. So it's not
Exactly.
just like one kind of clinical trial that you run. It's just not like one business strategy you run. It's multiple ones, and then you kind of just compile all this information, and then you go forth with that.
That's it. So I used to work for a data analytics company, and the phrase I always used to use that I now carry to everything in life. And sometimes it can sound a little bit cold and a bit weird, but it's just data. You look at the numbers, and then you
Yeah,
just go, all right, it's just data. It is really just data. If we look at the work that we're doing together, we're trying to put some size on Kieran because I was always that skinny 56-kilo boxer. I'm trying to put some size on. And sometimes I get emotional if I'm looking at the scales because I'm like, well, it's not getting bigger. But then I have to remind myself, I feel the emotion. I go, it's just data. When you have that weird frame of it's just data, it just the outside world is going to give you data. Maybe you had an expectation of number of clients you can impact or revenue or where you think clients should be when where they actually are. But when you bring it all back in, you go, okay, well, I'm a scientist and this is all just data. That sort of lens over that reality. It's got nothing to do with me as a human being. I'm just reading the data, just like I would look at, I don't know, I'm not a racing guy, but if you look at a newspaper and you look at all the racing results, you don't really care. You haven't got any money on it. It's just like, okay, well, all right, fine. That's the data, and trying to create that little bit of disconnect, because otherwise strong emotions cloud our judgment and then we make decisions that we don't need to make.
absolutely. I love that saying. Everything is just data. It is
It's
like
just
going
data.
back to that body weight like side of things. Like, if your body weight's gone up, it's gone down. Like, it doesn't matter. It's just data. It's like, why did this happen? Is this trends in body fat, muscle mass? Is it just a case of acute changes, hydration, food in your gut, sodium intake, inflammation, muscle, water retention, and stuff? It's just data. And then when you kind of know what the inputs of that outcome data is, then you can start again just putting things together. And that's where the huge benefit of coaches come into play, because we can look at things as like an experiment. Like I said, we can look at things objectively. But when you're like a client, when you're going through the process yourself, that's when you get like emotionally attached to certain outcomes. And this is like the key message I always want to push all the time is just focus on the process. Like, you got your daily targets, you got your non-negotiables, just make sure you hit that, and then the outcome will be the outcome, because a lot of individuals will just try controlling outcomes and they just get hugely frustrated. Whereas like, right, us, the coaches, let us focus on the outcome. You just focus on the process. If we're not achieving the outcome based on the data you are giving us, then we change the process and you just keep on focusing on that. So for us, yeah, two things there. Like, data is absolutely key. Everything's just data, and the experiment sort of analogy used, I love that. That's cool.
Yeah, 100%. I wish I had that when I was fighting, because I was weighing myself 3 times a day. And I think that's where some of the emotional load has come in with my training and nutrition. I was getting weighed in the
Yeah.
morning, in the afternoon, at night, and sometimes 4 or 5
Yeah.
times a day when it was fight week. It was a bit overkill. So yeah, if I take myself out of it and I just sort of give my numbers to my team and my coaches, or even if I don't even see the numbers, I step on the scales, they take them, and then they just say, all right, keep doing this, we'll change that. That would have been helpful. But yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it, how humans can emotionally respond to numbers in such an intense way when actually It is
Yeah.
just data, and sometimes it's not even numbers. Sometimes it's human behavior. Somebody will behave in a certain way and it'll trigger you. So, well, that's just data. Something inside me has been triggered. Something has happened in the outside world, but that in itself is just data. And having, like you said earlier, about journaling and sort of processing and kind of going, okay, well, what is this about? What is driving this? It can really make a big
Yes.
difference,
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Absolutely.
Chris, you've had to overcome a lot, because a lot of people will see Chris and they'll see, oh, wow, he's in all the big sports teams and he's kind of built this business and his reputation and his knowledge or whatever. But that hasn't been without challenges. What would you say were some of the biggest challenges you've had to overcome in life? Big, deep question, but that's where we go.
I guess like one of the main things initially I spoke about before is like a lot of like imposter syndrome. And I know before we jumped on the pod today, you said you're actually filming something about this later on. So it'd be great to get your insight on this as well. But it's almost a case of, I kind of had like the data there or the results there in terms of I am actually quite competent in what I'm doing, but just didn't have that confidence in myself to actually go and do it and push forward. And that was a massive like limiting belief and limiting factor for myself. And I had that for a long time, and I'm trying to like unwind and try and figure out what that was and how I've kind of overcome that to quite a large extent. But yeah, that was definitely a limiting factor for me. Like I can almost think going back, just writing like a social media post is like, I don't want to post this. Like, what are people going to think? Am I good enough? Am I worthy? Am I going to get like hate on it? So is that kind of like, I just didn't want to do it. And is that, yeah, a huge limiting factor for actually growth in myself, but growth in my business as well. And like, just kind of thinking as well, like, just from like a business perspective, like the target audience, I remember it's just because I didn't know who my target audience was. It's like I was trying to write and press other nutritionists, other like PhDs, doctors,
Yeah,
all this
yeah,
kind of stuff,
of
and
course, yeah.
and I was just getting a huge amount of like kind of like imposter syndrome from that. Like it's like, what are they going to think when they read my content? Am I going to be good enough? But is a case of I'm not speaking to them, I'm speaking to athletes. That's who I'm trying to help. So I think just having a slight pivot and clarity with that has helped massively in terms of overcoming that for sure. But that definitely did hold me back a lot, even going into like new teams, new conversations, new meetings is always that thing of like, right, if I say something, is it going to be the right thing? Am I going to be saying this in the right time, in the right tonality? I'd massively overthink things of how things are going to turn out. And I think that's helped me to a certain extent, but it's also been a hindrance because I really like kind of making sure the standard is super high and I'm very consistent in the delivery and everything I do is to the best of my ability. But then, that I guess that perfectionism kind of mindset has held me back to a large extent as well. So I think that is probably like the one of the main kind of challenges I've had from like a business growth and development growth side of things. Um, in terms of like life challenges, I have been quite fortunate. Everything's kind of been kind of a stepping stone, and like I said, I don't necessarily have like long term kind of objective targets. It's a case of I know what I'm doing now, and it moved me in the right direction. Opportunities present themselves, and that's just a stepping stone. So it hasn't been one thing that I've been able to identify that's like pivoted my life massively. It's been all these kind of small things. But if I was to reflect, I think imposter syndrome being a large thing there. So just out of my curiosity, in terms of imposter syndrome, how does that typically come about, and what are your typical strategies to overcome that?
100%. So, first of all, it's not necessarily imposter syndrome that's an issue. It's usually the relationship with imposter syndrome that's the issue. So, what do I mean by that? Well, when you go into a new field or you go and do something new, in a way, you kind of are a little bit of an imposter. Like, you've not done it yet. And it takes you a bit of time to kind of get that confidence and kind of experience and work your way through. And for some people, it just rolls off the bat. For other people, it takes a lot longer. But I think one of the big things is really understanding that when it comes to imposter syndrome, if you can change the relationship from I feel like an imposter, therefore I shouldn't be here, I'm not enough, I'm not worthy, who am I to say this, who am I to post that? then that's crippling, and that can really hold back your growth. If you can change your relationship with imposter syndrome from that towards, okay, when I'm feeling like a bit of an imposter, but actually that's a sign that I'm actually pushing myself into new territory. This is a sign that I'm growing. This is a sign that I'm learning. And if you look back at all the other times you had that imposter syndrome, and actually what happened once you grew out of that, and just understand that you're going to go through this again and again and again. There's an incredible phrase: for every level, there's another devil. And if you're a driven person that's going to keep going to the next level, to the next level, to the next level, that imposter syndrome is going to come up again and again and again and again. It's about holding that space for it and going, well, okay, so I'm feeling like a bit of an imposter, but that's okay, because it's a sign that I'm pushing myself outside of my comfort zone. Then if we go into the more, if I was coaching a client with imposter syndrome in our group environment in the academy, I always get everybody to write down, well, what is the belief? Is it I'm not good enough? I shouldn't be here? I get them to journal down everything around that. When did it start? When did it come up? And then I get them to do opposition thinking. So what is the opposite belief of that? And if you had the opposite of that, how would you behave? And if you had the opposite of that, how would you feel? And how would you react? And how would you do things? And what is the person that has the opposite of that? What do they believe about themselves? And getting really clear on that, so then they can actually point out the specific states and the emotions. Emotions and states have various different layers to them. We think about happiness, sadness, anger, anxiety. All of them will have a certain place in your body. That's where you experience it. Sometimes it's all over. Sometimes it's in your stomach, your chest. If you think about when you get nervous before a game or before a big moment, you might have some anxiety and some nerves. They might be in your stomach. And those feelings will be heavy or they'll be light. There'll be pressure, there'll be no pressure. Some even have colors. If you really think about it and you really go into the layers of that emotion, that's all there. So if you can do that within imposter syndrome, and identify the opposite state of that and get really in touch with that, doesn't mean the imposter syndrome is going to go straight away. What it does mean is that you can start to understand, okay, well, it's just my relationship with it. It's a sign that I'm going into new territory and I'm growing. And actually, if I had the opposite of that, this is how I would feel. And then once you're clear on the behaviors and the beliefs, you can write that down and put it up on. So I have lots of just words on the window written out. I just point to the right of me. Of just words of qualities that I feel like I embody as a man. And I want to remind my subconscious of that. I've got, abundance, joy, puzzles, freedom, gratitude, the king of the kingdom, energy, limitless, love, respect, and then I've got Gooners in capital letters because I'm a big Gooners fan. But those little things are just constantly adapting and growing and changing. In a one-to-one context, if this person's been successful again and again and again, many, many, many times, and it's still not there. I mean, even if we look at Anthony Joshua, he'll win the world title and he'll say, yeah, but still wasn't good enough. That's imposter syndrome. The guy's got a glittering career, been to the Olympics, boxed around the world. And I know because I've been that guy where I get my hand raised. I boxed a brilliant fight, but I was upset because there was like 1%. I was dropping my jab and I shouldn't have been dropping my left hand after the jab. So if you've got somebody that's been consistently successful, yet they still feel like an imposter, well, then I'm going to ask, well, where does that come from? When did that start? And going back into their childhood and understanding in a one-to-one context, well, what did that child, what did he hear? What did he have to learn? What did he have to do in order to let go? What part of him needs to be updated? What part of him needs to evolve? Because it always comes back to that inner child that doesn't feel enough, doesn't feel worthy. And when you go back there and have that inner conversation with that inner child and help them understand, well, actually, for me, my dad was my football manager. We were bottom of the bottom league in football, and I got benched every game. And everybody knows the manager's son gets a game. And if you're bottom of the bottom league and not even your dad will play you, that's how you know you're the worst human being on the planet. That's how the 12-year-old kid inside me took that. As an adult, we can laugh and you go, you're just shit at football. All right, move on. But as a kid, I felt so unworthy. So what do? You go into boxing where you can't get substituted and you have to assert dominance and prove how good you are. So that was where my imposter syndrome came from. It came from me having to prove myself, to my dad. And when you go back to those moments, you have that deeper understanding of yourself and you have these war stories, then you can connect with clients in a different way. And then you share that and you start to realize, actually, I'm not an imposter. And when I get through to the next level, of course, I'm going to feel that, I expect over the next 12 months, we'll probably double our team. And I've led teams in corporate organizations, but as a founder entrepreneur, that's different. I suspect there's going to be a moment where I feel a bit of an imposter, but I'm prepared for that and I'm okay with that because that's a part of my growth cycle. So I don't know if that answers the question, but ultimately the three things I would say is
Yeah.
change your relationship with the imposter syndrome, and then identify the beliefs and then the opposite of those beliefs and in the state. And if you have the resources and or time, do the one-to-one deeper work with a therapist or with a mindset coach to actually go back to those core moments to understand what that is. And when you do that, I mean, I'm still doing therapy and I'm still doing mindset coaching, even though I've done 150 hours of it, because as I'm growing and as our organization's growing at the speed that it's growing at, I have to grow and develop and evolve. So these insecurities and doubts are going to come up and I want to catch them and learn and evolve and develop. So they're the three things I would say for imposter syndrome. And I wish I knew that earlier because it would have saved myself a lot of time and hassle and grief.
Yeah, that's powerful. That's really cool. I think the big kind of takeaway from that for me is almost acknowledging that it's not a bad thing. Like you said, with every level, there's another devil. And I think I butchered that a little bit, but I absolutely love that, and it's always going to come into play. And just kind of seeing that as not as a negative thing, it's not a bad thing. It's like it's going to happen. This knows that you're probably pushing forward and you're growing, so embrace it and welcome it in, and that this is where you should be, and it probably shows that you're doing something right. So yeah, that was
Exactly.
cool.
Exactly that. And just own that and just go, I'm on the right path. A weird example I used to have was my left lower back. And you on the team probably heard, Kieran's left lower back's playing up. Great. I tore my back when I was a kid, play fighting, and my coach got really angry at me. And it does play up sometimes, but sometimes I go to a chiropractor and it's like there's nothing wrong with it medically, it's all in the mind. And basically before fights, my lower left back would go. And then I'd panic. And then Hazel taught me to change my relationship with my lower left back going on fight week. In fact, it got to the point where now, if that goes before a big event, let's say I'm speaking to a crowd that's bigger than I've spoken to in a while, my lower back starts to go. And I go, okay, good, this is a time that I need to switch on. Whereas before, my relationship with that was, I'm injured before a fight, I'm not going to be able to perform. And I always did perform. But again, it's never the thing that's the issue, it's your relationship with the thing that will create the issue. So yeah, making that shift, you can actually turn it into a really good and powerful thing.
Yeah, again, it's almost like a little bit of a sign that like you're on the right track, you're ready, you're prepared, like get stuck in.
Exactly that. Exactly that. Chris, it would be rude of me to not ask while we've got you on. I know you've done some prep, which is amazing, about nutrition and supplementation for cognitive performance. I think it's such an area that's so underrated. For me, I had to learn about that kind of area with my ADHD. So, ADHD, often very, very distractible, very impulsive. If you don't get your food, your training, your nutrition right, you can get overwhelmed very, very, very quickly. There can be lots of distraction. So for ADHDers, they talked a lot about getting zinc, magnesium, omega 3s, and having to double it down because the science was showing that ADHDers are deficient in those areas. And I never really thought about the nutrition and the supplementation from a cognitive performance perspective. So I started to learn some of it. But now that I've got a world-class expert in front of me, I'm double excited to go, all right, what's the deal, Chris? How can we get our minds firing and our cognitive performance working?
I think if you kind of sum it up, obviously there's so many layers involved in this, but if you to sum it up in one kind of statement, it'd just be eliminate all nutrient deficiencies. Because with pretty much most deficiencies is going to affect you cognitively in some way, shape, or form. So when you look at some of the research comparing, say, a westernized diet versus a Mediterranean diet, there's going to be huge differences in terms of cognitive ability. So what we kind of see is like westernized diets decrease cognitive ability, Mediterranean-based diet improve cognitive ability, cognitive function, and this is off the basis of Mediterranean diet is far more the nutrient dense. They have far more variety, healthy foods that go along with it. Where westernized diet is highly processed, very energy dense, but not nutrient dense. And there's such a huge correlation with an association with fruit and veg intake and sort of memory and alertness and all this kind of stuff. And as I kind of mentioned you briefly off air, it's like if you kind of fix one area of your nutrition, you end up fixing so many other things. So when I start working with athletes who typically won't have a, kind of huge amount of mindfulness over their nutrition, they might eat quite a lot of processed-based foods and things like that. And then first thing we look at just improving food quality. And all of a sudden, like the like the personality changes. It's like, wow, I got so much more energy, got a spring in my step, got a bounce in my step. Like it's like, wow, what has happened here? And it's like, yeah, you're just eating according to your body's demands, and not just the physical demands, but the mental demands as well. So that is absolutely huge. And like from experience, like I've always experienced this, I'm sure you probably would have as well when you're boxing and in large energy deficits. But how's your mental performance and mental health when you're in a large energy deficit? I would
Oh,
imagine,
mate, I was like a zombie,
yeah.
mate. I was like, people used to say to me, "You're like dead behind the eyes." And I'm 172 centimeters and fighting at 56 kilos. That's bloody, that's mental. So I used to be literally brain fog. I would be like, someone would say something to me, and I'd be like, "Are they speaking to me?" Anxiety incredibly high, all over the shop. I don't even know how I used to get on the ring and actually fight after. I think it was more willpower. It was more, you've put me through so much pain and suffering, you're getting it. was the sort of the output of that. Mate, it was awful, absolutely awful.
Yeah. So one of the things here, when you look at overall, don't be deficient in anything. Yes, we've got the micronutrients we can look at in terms of food quality, but are you just having enough energy? Like, if we look at one kind of landmark kind of study called the Minnesota Semi-Starvation studies or trial, basically volunteers in World War II basically volunteered to, shall we say, semi-starve themselves so that you can figure out what the impact is of refeeding. So this was what for like prisoners of war. It's like they've been in captivity for a long time, probably semi-starved. And what would happen then if you just put them back on a normalized diet? Because you can have something called refeeding syndrome, which could then be fatal in a lot of cases. So they don't just say like, right, you've been malnourished, let's put you on 4,000 calories and replenish you, because that can cause like certain like bodily electrolyte shifts and stuff, and that could be fatal. So it's a case of like, right, let's control these individuals, semi-starve them by decreasing the calorie intake, increasing the activity levels, and let's just kind of see what happens when we refeed them. But what we found in this kind of really tightly controlled starvation study is, yes, you get all these kind of metabolic adaptations and all this kind of stuff, but their mental health declines significantly. Like they're almost developing like psychotic tendencies because they're so energy deprived, which is absolutely incredible. Obviously, we can't, for ethical reasons, they can't do these kind of experiments anymore. But it just shows like how quickly their mental health deteriorates when they're on very low calories. So with boxers, combat sport athletes I work with, when they sort of prior to work with me and they tell me about all the stories they used to do about making weight, and their mental health declined significantly. And I've kind of experienced this to a certain extent where I'm trying to get lean. Is like, your mood decreases, you become more irritable, become more anxious, all this kind of stuff, and you just become just a bit more of an asshole, really. But as soon as you start eating well, in terms of having enough energy, eliminating all deficiencies, your mood is just going to go through to another level, and with that, your attention is going to improve, your memory is going to improve, your reaction time, coordination, all this kind of good stuff. So that is absolutely huge. And when we think of just things like, say, fasting, like I think there's two kind of sides of the story here, but most of the research is shown with fasting is that when you fast, your blood glucose will drop, therefore have less glucose availability for the brain, and therefore attention, coordination, executive function will start to decline. So it's a case of, again, come back to, don't, if you look for optimal mental performance, like don't be deficient in anything. Perhaps let's focus on good routine, good structure for your day in terms of eating. Dehydration being a massive one. In elite athletes, or shall we say any form of athlete, just 2% drop in body mass through dehydration can massively affect physical performance. So essentially, cause you're losing a lot of sweat, your plasma volume decreases, your heart rate has to pump harder to maintain that blood pressure. So you have more kind of thermal and physiological strain. But in terms of like your cognition, that will also decline. So And again, in terms of sort of like cognitive function, mood, mental health, and all that kind of stuff. So these are kind of simple things like we're looking at before you even get into the supplements and all the cool stuff. Is like, are you hydrating properly? Like a simple thing: carry a water bottle around with you. And then, are you eating a well-balanced diet that's going to cover most nutrient deficiencies? If you are, you're probably doing a good thing. But you find the issues when you go to extremes with very low calorie dieting, poor food quality, all this kind of stuff. And it's very easily fixable. Like, it doesn't take that much work to do it. We don't have to like do all these crazy sort of like experiments, not like trying to fly someone to the moon. It's like, right, let's just do the basics, the world-class basics, and let's get super consistent with them. And I know you'll agree with this one as well. In terms of cognitive function, is sleep. So it doesn't matter how well you are fueled, how well you're hydrated. If you're having 4 to 5 hours of sleep per night, you're absolutely useless. In
Yeah,
terms of
100%.
reaction time and coordination, you always just feel like you're on the back foot. You're always like sort of 2-3 seconds behind. And if you are an athlete, 2-3 seconds behind in terms of your decision making is absolutely monumental in terms of winning or losing, getting smacked in the face or dodging a punch. You know, so it's just a huge thing finding like sleep hygiene habits and all this kind of stuff to ensure you get a very good night's sleep. Like I know for myself, my diet on a whole is pretty good. I like to think it is being a nutritionist. um,
Yeah.
but some days of the week, I want to go down to Wasps Rugby. I'm up at sort of 4:15 in the morning to get down there for early kind of meetings, 7:30, 8 o'clock. So in that sort of day, I have like 4.5 hours sleep, and I know every time within that day, I'm a little bit behind where I usually am in terms of my energy levels, my ability to communicate properly. Probably shouldn't say that. Hopefully they don't hear that. But I
Mm.
always feel like I'm always on the back foot because I'm just sleep deprived. And there is
Yeah.
certain areas we can talk about to overcome that. But I know that, it's such an important thing just to, one, recover you physically and mentally from the previous day and prepare you physically and mentally for the next day is the most potent performance enhancing tool we have. And it's just not valued enough, I feel, in this society. Everyone loves like the kind of the grind, the 4 to 5 hours night for sleep, work, generate cash,
Mm.
let's make some money, let's go in the right direction. But then what implications that actually have into the actual productivity? So I know when I focus on my sleep, I'm so much more productive. I get more done in the space of 4 hours in the morning than I can do in a 10-hour kind of workday. And so it's just kind of thinking like, right, let's focus on sleep to be more productive, and that's going to generate more kind of downtime, less overwhelm, less stress. I can sleep better, and it's just a nice kind of positive cycle you can work through. So they're like the kind of key kind of core kind of drivers. And then when you look into like the minerals, vitamins, and some supplements, the minerals you mentioned before, like the iodine, the iron, zinc, and magnesium, and they're very much involved with like neurological development. We know that deficiencies in certain minerals can impact neural processes, vital for brain function and proper function of neurons and stuff like that. So that's really important from the mineral side of things. In terms of vitamins, the ones of most importance are like B, E, D, and C. And they're going to be involved in things like energy production, brain function, methylation of neurons, synthesis of neurotransmitters. Say, for example, vitamin E can improve cognitive performance, memory. So just have more nuts, seeds, spinach, broccoli, that kind of stuff in your diet. Vitamin D is like associated with the planning, processing, and formation of new memories. And then vitamin C synthesis of like components of the nervous system. So you get that through like fruit and veggies. So basically, like all this like really cool stuff can just happen by having just a well balanced diet. So when some like athletes ask me like, Chris, how can I get the cutting edge with my nutrition? It's like, okay, let's look at how many fruit and veg you have in a day.
Mm.
And like, Chris, what the fuck are you on about? Like,
Yeah.
what about creatine? What about caffeine? What about beta alanine? It's like, how many fruit and veg you have in a
Basics.
day? About
Basics.
two.
Yeah.
It's like, right, let's push that up to 8 to 10, wide variety, and let's see how well you perform. A week later, it's like, wow, huge difference. And it's those world class basics. It's like, let's not worry about all these cool kind of supplements, like, the the shininess of like nootropics and
Mm.
stuff like that. Let's focus on the key
Basics.
core basics, because that
Foundations.
is going to be absolutely huge. So I know we can go down huge rabbit holes with some research and even some like cool research is still in its like infancy kind of phases that doesn't have much there, but does show some kind of light for future kind of prescriptions and stuff or supplementations. Like, let's just focus on the main things first. That is absolutely huge. You cannot sort of ignore that.
You can't beat good old fashioned sleep, water, and genuine fruits and vegetables. It's so funny because you're always reminding me of this. You're always like world class basics, world class basics, world class basics. That's why I brought in the nutrition prep company, because it's just automated. Then it's just like, well, the world class basics are there. I don't have to think about them. But I was really excited when you talked about nutritional deficiencies, because instantly my brain went, oh, so I'm guessing he's going to talk about like getting blood tested, or like going out and sort of figuring out which ones are the genuine deficiencies first, and then obviously you'd probably try and supplement and put in certain fruits and vegetables to try and counteract that. And actually, it's like, it's a good old fashioned kiss. Keep it simple, stupid. Eat well, sleep enough, and drink as much water as you can. What is your thoughts
Yeah,
on those sorts
that
of
was
tests
cool.
and things?
Yeah, they definitely have their place. Definitely have their
Mm,
place. Um, I rarely use them, but if you do have the means, it can be a nice kind of luxury there for sure. Because it just highlights of like, okay, your iodine's low, like these foods are high in iodine, let's have more of
plenty of
that.
those.
Your
Yeah.
zinc's low, so it kind of, you're just kind of using it for more efficiency. Where if you just kind of go from like a blanket approach of 8 to 10 fruit and veggies per day, wide variety of colors, do that consistently, you're pretty much gonna 95% going to be there, So I never have to kind of go down the blood testing route. But if we're kind of doing all that kind of stuff and the athlete or the individual is still feeling like they're not firing on all cylinders, then it's like, okay, let's take this an extra kind of layer. And when it comes to like deficiencies, like, you know, if your body needs 100%, putting in super amounts like 150% is not really going to do much extra, okay? So just make sure that you are sufficient and not deficient, not like super sufficient,
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
when it comes to like sort of whether it's just like physical performance or mental performance, we're not necessarily looking to get like this superiority kind of outcome. Is more a case of just offsetting any compromises there. So if you are, for example, low in B vitamins and that's associated with like, or helps with like energy production, if you're deficient, then that's going to take you down a level. If you're deficient in zinc, it's going to take you down another level as well. So it's like, right, okay, let's have a good quality diet and get you back up to where you need to be. Get you back up to baseline so you're operating and firing on all cylinders all the time. And with blood test, if you have a good one, like there's a lot of bogus ones out there, but if you have a good quality one, it might be like, right, okay, your iron's down, your zinc's down, your vitamin E's down. These are the types of foods that could work to kind of push these levels up. It's just quite a nice way to go about doing it for sure, if you have the means. But if you don't have the means, then standard 8 to 10 portions, fruit and veggies, get them in and get them in consistently, and find a way to get them in consistently. Because they may have like a good day, a good week, like, oh, I hit my targets this week. It's like, okay, you probably somewhat supported better levels, but have you actually made a good kind of a meaningful difference here? I don't know. Yes, maybe no. But if you do it for a long period of time, and that's when it comes back to that key word, that consistency, doing it again and again for a long period of time, and those kind of world class basics. When you think of like world class athletes, say a football player, a rugby player, yes, they do some cool kind of tricks and all that kind of stuff, but they're so good at that, the world class basics. They can pass a ball really well, they can
Mm.
throw a ball really well, they can receive a ball well. It's these little things they do, with a high, very, very high standard, with excellence, really. And the same thing with the nutrition is finding a way to do this for a long period of time so you have a meaningful outcome.
Success is boring, as they say. Just doing the same things again and again
It
and
is
again and again. Chris, what does the
100%.
phrase forget us as a team? What does the phrase total mental performance mean to you? If you had total mental performance, how would you know?
I would have, for me, if I think about it, I'd be operating with a huge amount of mental clarity, and my decision making would be very much on point. So when I have that, I'd be very articulate in terms of what I'm doing. I have a lot of clarity. I probably won't repeat myself. And that's what kind of comes to me. And I'm just always making the right decisions, and the right decisions under pressure or when there's no pressure. I can always think clear and concisely when it matters to have a good outcome or the best possible outcome.
Chris, absolutely love that, mate. Thank you so much for coming on. Guys, we're going to be tagging Chris on our Instagram post, or if you look in the show notes of the podcast, that's where I will put all of Chris's links in there. Chris, mate, it's been an absolute honor having you on. Chris has also got his own podcast, so if athletics and nutrition for athletes are a big thing for you, make sure you jump over there. But Chris, mate, do you want to say it's been an honor, and thank you so much for coming on.
No, thank you. It's been really good fun. Thank you for having me on, and I hope everyone took some value from that. But any questions, queries, anything you just want to soundboard or chat through, just drop me a message on Instagram, DMs. That's probably the best place to get a hold of me. And happy to have a chat and help you in any way, shape, or form.
Incredible. Big love, Chris. Thank you so much, mate.
Thank you, Kieran.